Welcome to your deep dive. Today we are diving deep into the world of habits with James Clear's Atomic Habits.
A great choice.
It is. We'll be exploring not only how habits work, but also how to build good ones and how to kick those bad ones to the curb.
Sounds good.
What really struck you about this book, expert speaker? It's brimming with insightful stories and practical tips.
You know, one thing that really stood out to me was how Clear uses his own story, his personal experience, to illustrate the power of small changes.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
Well, he had this really serious accident in high school, a facial injury.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, broken nose, multiple fractures, the whole 9 yards.
A real setback.
Absolutely, a major setback. But he was determined to recover, and not just recover, but make it onto the varsity baseball team.
I can only imagine the dedication that must have taken.
Oh, absolutely. And he credits his comeback to, consistently applying those tiny habits day after day.
So inspiring. A real testament to how small, consistent actions can lead to huge results, right? It's like that idea of the 1% rule, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. He actually uses a really cool example to explain this 1% rule, the turnaround of British cycling.
Oh, I've heard about this. They went from being basically unknown to dominating the sport.
Exactly. Back in the early 2000s, they were practically a joke on the professional cycling scene. Hadn't won a Tour de France in over a century.
Wow, yeah, a far cry from their success today.
Right. Then comes Dave Brailsford as their new performance director, and he's all about this philosophy of aggregation of marginal gains. Basically, they took every single aspect of cycling, from the type of pillow the cyclist slept on.
Seriously, the pillow.
Yeah, the pillows, the design of the bike seats, every little detail, and aimed to improve it by just 1%.
Fascinating. So no massive overhauls, just a bunch of tiny tweaks.
Precisely. And you know what? The results were unbelievable. Within a decade, British cycling goes from zero to hero, racking up Tour de France titles, Olympic gold medals, the whole works.
It's incredible how those seemingly insignificant 1% improvements can add up to such extraordinary achievements over time. Now, here's where Clear really challenges conventional wisdom. He says we should prioritize systems over goals.
Interesting.
Yeah, it does seem counterintuitive. Isn't setting goals the key to success? That's what we're always told.
It's a common belief, for sure, but Clear makes a compelling argument against being solely goal-oriented. He outlines 4 major pitfalls of focusing only on goals.
I'm really curious to hear this. Lay it on me.
Okay, so the first problem is that goals often only provide a temporary change.
Makes sense. You hit your goal, celebrate, and then what?
Right, it's not sustainable. What's next? The second issue is that goals can create a yo-yo effect.
I know exactly what you mean, like with weight loss.
Exactly. People often revert back to old habits once they hit their target weight because they haven't changed their underlying system.
Right, the focus is on the end result, not the process.
Exactly. The third problem is goals can make your happiness conditional, dependent on achieving a future outcome.
You're essentially saying, I'll be happy when.
Yes, which just delays your satisfaction.
Right.
And finally, goals can sometimes even clash with long-term progress.
How so?
Well, you can get so fixated on reaching that specific target that you neglect the sustainable systems that would lead to lasting success. You miss the forest for the trees.
It's like winning the battle, but losing the war.
That's a great way to put it. So instead of being laser-focused on goals, Clear suggests we shift our attention to building systems.
Okay, so if the goal is the destination, the system is the vehicle that gets us there.
Precisely. It's the process, the habits, the routines that drive those consistent results we're after.
I like that analogy. So it's like baking a cake. The goal is the delicious cake, but the system is the recipe, the ingredients, the baking time.
Perfect example. If you nail this system, the desired outcome will follow naturally. Clear also introduces this really interesting concept, the 3 layers of behavior change.
3 layers. Tell me more.
So the outermost layer, the most visible one, is outcomes. This is what most people tend to fixate on. Losing weight, landing that promotion, winning a championship.
The things we want to achieve.
Exactly. Beneath that, you have the process layer, which involves changing your actions, like switching up your diet, putting in extra effort at work, practicing more.
The actions we take to reach those outcomes.
But the deepest layer, the foundation, is identity. And Clear argues that this is the most crucial for lasting change. It's about changing your beliefs about yourself.
Interesting. Can you give me an example of what that looks like in practice?
Absolutely. Clear tells this story about Brian Clark, an entrepreneur who wanted to stop biting his nails.
A pretty common habit.
It is, and he tried all the usual things to break it.
Bitter nail polish.
Probably.
Yeah.
But what finally worked was a shift in his identity.
How do you do that?
He started getting regular manicures. This seemingly small change actually transformed how he saw himself. By taking care of his nails, he started believing he was someone who doesn't bite their nails.
So the behavior naturally followed the shift in belief.
Exactly. You're not just changing what you do, you're changing who you believe you are. Which brings us to what are probably the most well-known parts of Clear's book, the 4 laws of behavior change.
Ah, yes. The 4 laws. A framework for understanding how habits work and how we can change them. I'm ready to hear more.
Me too. I'm ready to break them down. All right, let's break down these laws. Law number 1, make it obvious.
Okay, make it obvious. So what does that mean exactly?
It's all about bringing awareness to your habits and setting up your environment to encourage those good habits.
So being mindful of the cues that trigger our habits.
Yes. Clear talks about this technique used by Japanese railway workers called pointing and calling. Basically, they point at a signal and call out the action they're about to take.
Sounds a bit unusual, but I guess it makes sense.
Right. It seems simple, but it forces them to be super aware, even for the most routine tasks, reducing errors.
I see. So it's about bringing those habits into our conscious awareness.
Precisely. And then it's about designing your environment to make those good habits really stand out. Like if you're trying to drink more water, keep a full water bottle right on your desk.
Oh yeah, out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. It's all about making the cues for your good habits obvious and kind of hiding the cues for those pesky bad habits.
I like that. It's like setting yourself up for success.
Exactly. Okay, ready for law number 2.
Hit me with it.
Law number 2, make it attractive. This is where dopamine comes into play.
Ooh, dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter.
Right. Our brains are wired to seek out pleasurable experiences, and dopamine is the signal for that pleasure and reward.
Makes sense. We tend to gravitate towards things that make us feel good.
Absolutely. So if we can link our habits to positive feelings, they're way more likely to stick. Clear even talks about temptation bundling as a way to make those habits more appealing.
Ooh, temptation bundling. I like the sound of that. What is that?
It's all about pairing something you need to do with something you actually enjoy doing. Clear mentions this engineering student who rigged a stationary bike to only play Netflix if he was cycling at a certain speed.
No way. That's genius.
Right. So he's connecting an activity he needs to do, exercise, with something he loves, Netflix, making it way more attractive.
Love it. It's like hacking your own motivation. What's the 3rd law?
Hooked. The 3rd law is make it easy. And it's all about reducing that friction associated with good habits and making it harder to slip into those bad ones.
Okay, so making it easier to do what you want to do and harder to do what you don't want to do.
You got it. So for example, if you're trying to read more, keep a book on your bedside table. Simple, but effective.
Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Exactly. If you're trying to curb those social media cravings, delete the apps from your phone, at least temporarily. The goal is to optimize your environment so the desired behavior is the easiest path.
Make it a no-brainer. I like it.
Right. Now for the grand finale, the 4th law, make it satisfying. This one's all about ensuring those habits are rewarding, even if the big payoff comes later.
That makes sense, but our brains love instant gratification. How do we make those good habits feel good right now?
That's the key. Clear suggests incorporating what he calls immediate rewards. These are small, pleasurable experiences you link to your good habits. So let's say you're trying to save money. You can transfer a small amount to a fun money account every time you resist an impulse purchase.
Ah, so it's like giving yourself a little pat on the back for making the right choice.
Exactly. You're associating that good habit with a positive feeling, reinforcing it. We've covered a lot of ground here. Clear's personal story, the 1% rule, systems over goals, the 3 layers of behavior change, and now the 4 laws. It's like we've assembled this incredible toolkit for building better habits.
I feel like I have a whole new perspective on habits now. But wait, there's more, right? Clear doesn't stop there. He dives into even more practical strategies.
Oh, absolutely. We've got habit tracking, the 2-minute rule, even the idea of using accountability partners and habit contracts. It's all about creating an environment where those good habits can flourish.
Okay, I'm ready for round 2. Let's dive into those strategies. It's pretty amazing when you think about it, you know? We actually have a lot of control over our lives through our habits.
It is empowering, isn't it?
Totally. And we've covered so much already. How habits work, the best ways to build good ones, and how to overcome those inevitable plateaus. It's like we have a roadmap to becoming better versions of ourselves.
A roadmap. That's a great way to put it. And, one of the things that really struck me about Clear's book is this idea of going beyond just being good at something, but actually becoming truly great.
Yeah, how do we make that jump? What's the secret sauce?
Well, Clear talks about this concept he calls just manageable difficulty.
Just manageable difficulty. Okay.
Yeah, and he illustrates this with the example of the comedian Steve Martin. Did you know that he spent years, like years, honing his craft, facing that fear of bombing on stage every single night?
Wow, that takes guts.
Right. And he did this for 18 years. Can you believe it? 18 years before hitting it big.
That's incredible. I mean, what kept him going all those years?
It was the challenge, pushing himself just beyond his comfort zone. And there's actually science behind this. Researchers have found that we're most motivated when we're working on tasks that are, get this, about 4% beyond our current ability.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about making things super easy, but finding that sweet spot, that Goldilocks zone, where we're challenged just enough to stay engaged.
So a little bit of struggle is actually a good thing.
It seems so. It keeps us on our toes. But you bring up a good point. There is that risk of, getting bored, hitting a plateau. We naturally crave novelty. Once those habits become routine, they can lose their shine. Right.
Totally. It's easy to get stuck in a rut. So how do we prevent that? How do we keep things fresh and exciting?
That's where Clear suggests incorporating a little bit of, variability into our habits. Think of it like a variable reward system.
Yeah.
Like those slot machines. You never know when you're going to hit the jackpot, and that keeps you hooked.
So instead of doing the same workout every day, I might mix things up with some new exercises or try a different class.
Exactly. But it's not just about random variety. It's about, strategically choosing variations that challenge you in different ways, keeping you engaged, finding ways to keep that spark alive.
I like that. So it's not just about having the right habits, but also cultivating this mindset of commitment and consistency, showing up both physically and mentally and continually striving to improve.
That's it. You've hit the nail on the head. It's about showing up, being present, engaged, and always looking for ways to refine your approach. This has been such an insightful deep dive, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. We've gone from the nuts and bolts of how habits form to these really profound ideas about the connection between our habits, who we are, and how we feel. It's like we've unlocked the secret code to self-improvement.
Totally. And, as we wrap things up here, I think one of the key takeaways for me is that we're not just creatures of habit, we're creators of habit.
Right.
We really do have the power to shape our habits and, in turn, shape our lives.
So powerful. It's not about overnight transformations. It's those small, consistent actions that add up to big results over time. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners before we sign off?
Just remember, you have the power to design a life you truly love, one good habit at a time.
Beautifully said. And with that, we'll wrap up our deep dive into atomic habits. We hope you're feeling inspired to take control of your habits and create positive change in your life. Remember, small changes consistently applied can lead to extraordinary results. So go out there and start building those atomic habits.